Hey there. I wanted to expand a bit on the idea of movement nutrition that I shared about in a post yesterday. And I don't know about you, but with the arrival of spring and warmer weather, I'm really desiring to diversify my movement practices, to not feel restricted by the indoors and the routines and the repetition, but actually have a more dynamic, spontaneous way of moving my body on varied terrain for the purposes of nourishment and play and pleasure more so than the kind of linear, fitness oriented ways of moving. And if you're a little unsure about why you'd want to move in a diverse way that engages your brain and your nervous system just as much as your muscles, let's take a trip back through time and space to how humans evolved as hunter gatherers. So, our skeleton and our nervous system is designed for very diverse, intermittent, and joyful movement. So, we had to perform functions like gathering food, collecting water, creating tools, creating artwork. And that's very different from where we evolved into a more settled agricultural lifestyle, which of course is more sedentary. And we hear a lot about the perils of sitting all the time and not getting enough movement and exercise. But a perspective that's often missed is as we became more agricultural and living in towns and cities, we specialized. So we went from being generalists to specialists in the way that we move and function in the world. So if we consider the modern context of sitting for 8 hours a day at a computer, you're moving, right? You're moving your arms and your hands, but you have a high volume of movement with a lot of repetition and not a lot of diversity. Or if you work in the trades and you're involved in production or repairs, again, you're working on the same products, the same objects all day long, week after week. There's not a lot of variety in the actual tasks that you're asking your body to perform. So, as a result of this specialization and repetition, our movement diet becomes very basic. There's not a lot of diversity, there's not a lot of nutrition in it, and there's often a lot of wear and tear and repetitive strain that leads to not only discomfort and pain, but a lot of chronic diseases as well. So, I like to take inspiration from our actual anatomy. And if we think about our life as hunter gatherers, our arms and hands are designed for manipulation. So if you look at all the joints in your fingers, your wrists, your elbow, your shoulder joint, there's a lot of capacity for rotation and extension and flexion. And consider the sort of functions, the sort of movements you perform throughout your day. Are you making use of that capacity for manipulation and rotation in your arms? Because if you're not, having to reach very often or hang from your arms or do fine motor tasks with your fingers, you'll lose that capacity over time. And then if we look to our spine, the function of our spine is to organize the rest of the body. So what does that mean? The spine is designed to change shape. We have all this capacity for flexion and extension, side bending, rotation, and that helps put our limbs in a better place for meeting the moment, for taking on the challenge or the play, whatever it might be. And again, consider your daily life and the sort of shapes you're in throughout the day. Is your spine pretty well fixed, or is there a lot of dynamic movement and changing shape of your spine? And then if we move down to our legs are designed for locomotion, to power us through the world, to move us. That's why we have some of our largest muscles attached to our legs. And then if we look at the skeletal system, our hip joints and our knees are designed to flex and extend. And also, the hip joint is a ball and socket joint. So it has that capacity for internal, external rotation and abduction. So if you imagine something like rock climbing or even hiking on varied terrain, you don't want hips that are just stable and in the same position the whole time, because you need to change shape relative to the landscape. So that's a bit about the design of the human body and how we need to recreate some of this ancestral movement that, we see a lot in babies. Babies have that capacity to move over the ground, roll over the ground, change the shape of their spine, because they don't have large muscles to make a lot of those movements possible. So if you're curious about this, if this opens up some possibilities, some intrigue for you, I encourage you to come to one of my somatic movement classes. And at least for the next month or so, we're going to explore a lot of developmental movements. So the movements that babies and toddlers naturally, organically make. And returning to those will actually bring us closer to the really diverse, playful, dynamic movement of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. So I've got a weekly online class on Tuesday evenings, and then a twice weekly in-person class at Rebloom Community Health and Wellness in Strathmore. So I hope some of those options work for you. The link is in my bio, and I'd love to support you in enhancing your movement nutrition.